Hi, my name is Ryan Pack.
And I'm Nicole Barlow.
And this is Soundtrack Your Life, where we speak with a guest about a soundtrack that is important to them. Today, our guest is Jenn, host of the My Streaming Bubble podcast. Welcome, Jenn.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
So, Jenn, why don't you tell our listeners about My Streaming Bubble?
Sure. It's my podcast, and it's where I talk about the shows I love with the people I tolerate. So every week I tolerate a friend or family member, fellow podcaster, and we just read way too much into a show or a movie. We overthink it, overanalyze it, and have a lot of fun with it. And then to close out the show, we share like what's been streaming, like show recommendations or anything like that. I love Nicolas Cage, so we play the 6 Degrees of Nicolas Cage, where we connect the title to a Nick flick, which is very easy to do, usually in like a couple of steps. And it's just kind of a fun way to close out the show and pay my respects to Senior Cage. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We can rant and rave or just fan gush for an hour or plus, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so our listeners should check it out. I think we have a lot of overlap as far as like what we like to do on our podcasts, because we like to overanalyze, and we also do like to talk about Nicholas Coppola.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Nay, Coppola.
We like to talk about Coppolas on the show.
Yes. I understand that. I just listened to your Marie Antoinette episode because I love that movie. And
Another Coppola.
Another Coppola, and another great soundtrack. So no notes. I agreed with everything. So.
Did you also have an awesome Sweet 16 party that was themed after the French Revolution?
My Sweet 16 was pretty awesome from what I remember. It was the 90s, so went out and did a lot of 90s kids things, naughty 90s kid things.
Well, we're gonna transport ourselves back to the 90s briefly today. What movie are we talking about, Jenn?
We're talking about the movie Can't Hardly Wait from 1998, I believe.
Yep. This is the 1998 Deborah Kaplan and Harry Elfont film. We've covered Elfont and Kaplan before for Josie and the Pussycats, their follow-up to this film. But anyways, why are we talking about Can't Hardly Wait today?
I love this movie, and it's kind of funny because like last year it randomly came up in a conversation with a friend of mine and we were just kind of gushing about it. And then within a week I was at a garage sale and came across the DVD for like a quarter. So I was like, it's a sign. So I hadn't watched it in a very long time. So that was my first time rewatching it since probably the 90s. And it took me right back. I instantly just kind of like time traveled back to the 90s, and it brought back a lot of feelings and memories. And so I was like, well, I think this is an excellent pick for my guest spot here.
It's an amazing pick. I'm actually surprised that we haven't done it before because it's so chock-a-block with 90s bangers, and being a movie that kind of centers on a house party. There's a lot of diegetic music, non-diegetic music. It's wall-to-wall music. Whether or not that's music that you're going to feel really awkward about because you, like me, Jenn, graduated in 1999.
Yep.
Might make you feel different things, I think, if you were of the era. I don't know how it felt like getting your like quarter DVD like version of this. Like, how did it feel rewatching this for you? Because I have thoughts.
Oh my gosh. Well, first I'll say rewatching anything from the 90s is going to be, it gets a little tricky because of what was accepted, even though it wasn't acceptable. So when I first rewatched it like last year, I was like, oh, that's right. There's homophobic slurs. And, then you got your cultural appropriators, and which is too funny. But I would say other than that, it is just a time capsule of that period, from the fashion, the music, the destructive house parties. Like, I was always afraid to throw a house party because of how house parties were portrayed in the 80s and 90s. I'm like, people are terrible. I'm not cleaning that.
I'm not
Right.
cleaning that. Yeah. So speaking of house parties, so I watched this movie in 1999, and specifically, I watched this movie on New Year's Eve of 1999 with a group of friends at a small party. It was probably 10 of us at this New Year's Eve. Let's just call it a party in finger quotes, okay? We're high school kids. We're in the finished basement of Nick Pezapane's house. His parents are making margaritas, I think because they really want Nick's party to go well, and they think underage drinking is a way to facilitate that. But yeah, I remember watching this film and seeing these very like exaggerated versions of exactly who we were, because we would have been the same age as the people that we were watching in this film that we got from Blockbuster. So it was a really strange sensation watching it today and remembering like the Y2K vibes, like remembering being in that basement, like, oh shit, like is everything gonna crash? Because if it does, I'm dying in Nick Pezapane's basement.
No.
My bank account's going to go to zero. All $200 is going to be gone.
Right. What's
will I
happened to my
do?
Wet Seal rewards card?
Love it.
To me though, if this movie had a smell, it would be Bath and Body Works cucumber melon mixed with like Wetzel pretzels. It's that like 90s for me. It's that like cusp of Y2K, like late era 90s that I think you can really only understand truly if you lived it. And I lived it.
Yep. Nice shout out with the melon cucumber though. Oh my God.
Right? Because it's like, for me, that's what it just is so reminiscent of high school. And then as a result, the soundtrack from music supervisor Ralph Soul, who also went on to do 10 Things I Hate About You and did music supervision on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which makes complete sense.
The movie, not the TV show.
Not the TV show? No, I'm
it was the movie.
Oh.
That's different. Well, either way, Buffy connections, 10 Things I Hate About You, which is another one of those kind of like grouping of Y2K high school movies. It is, there's a lot of music on here that is very 90s. There is Smash Mouth in abundance.
There is a lot of Smash Mouth. There is a lot of Eve 6.
Eve 6 songs. We get 2 Eve 6 songs.
Yeah. I remember watching this on HBO. Like, I didn't watch it in the theater, and I probably caught 75% of the movie. And I remember being like, oh, like for a teen movie, like this seems like a little bit more like elevated than the, She's All That sort of teen movies. And this is like the directorial debut for Elfont and Kaplan, and it's like a pretty nice, like you can tell like it's directed by people who like want to make a movie. Like it's not like a teen movie where it's just like a bunch of like, static shots like that. There's that scene where like his letter gets stuck on like someone's foot and then the keg, and like there's a lot of like kind of intricate action scenes in this like house, which I thought was kind of impressive. Like I wouldn't call them auteurs or anything, but it's like it's a little bit more than you would expect out of a teen movie, in my opinion, direction wise.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is trying to give you something, maybe not real. I mean, real is the wrong word, but it does seem to kind of harken back to wanting to be this late 90s version of sort of Dazed and Confused. There are like, actual callbacks to that film and some of the dialogue. It feels a little bit like they wanted to achieve that sort of lived in day in the life vibe. And I think when I read this, they were going through iterations of the script, and then they kind of realized like, I think this only works if it's just The Party. And that was the original working title, actually, is The Party. They changed it when they got the rights to The Replacements Can't Hardly Wait.
That's awesome. That's a much better title.
It's a much better title, and like I think this was for the better. Unsurprisingly, I think it was kind of hard to get the rights from The Replacements, and so once they got it, the song was picked by the directors, and they love it. And once they got it, they were like, well, that's what we've got to call the film.
Which is weird because the song itself, while it has references like lyrically to the movie, like, I'll write you a letter tomorrow. It's really a sad song about an adult male who's like hungover.
Yeah, Can't Hardly Wait is a bummer of a song, wrapped in like a really melodic package. And you're right, it has like no bearing on anything in this movie, which is probably why they flipped it to the end credits. And there's no like through line that revolves around this song. But there are a lot of tracks that I feel like are the resonant, like emotional ones, or kind of those like 70s callbacks, that 70s, 80s nostalgia sort of feel. And then everything else that you get like in the party that's very reflective of the time and the characters is like severely 90s. Severely.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Do you have been a song
absolutely.
on this soundtrack where you're like, you hear it and you're just immediately like back there? Like, what is the most Y2K song on this soundtrack for you?
Oh my
I mean, like
gosh, that's
5. Oh my God, there's so many.
God, that's a great question because this like it has like its official soundtrack and then just a ton of other songs featured in it that aren't on the official soundtrack. So it's hard to choose. Oh my God. I feel like anything Third Eye Blind is very 90s. Smash
Very.
Mouth, very 90s. Yeah, they got White Zombie in there. Like the whole soundtrack really, because the 90s musically was so eclectic, pre-streaming. We all listened to a little bit of everything. We weren't so segregated by our genres. Even though the 90s felt like it was still very like label heavy and click heavy, I feel like it really wasn't like that with music. People still have their preferred genres, of course, but when you look at like, the Billboard's top 10, top 20, top 100, it was a mix of everything. So I think this soundtrack does a really good job mixing in a little bit of everything like that. You got Busta Rhymes, Missy Elliott, Parliament, Blink 182, Eve 6, like it's Barry Manilow, for God's sakes. So 90s. If I had to pick just one, I think I'd have to pick Smash Mouth because they were very much all over the place in the 90s. I remember Smash Mouth. I remember watching the videos back when MTV still played videos, and the song always like playing like regularly on like the pop stations and stuff. So very much, very, very much late 90s for me.
Very that. And there are many people that will argue that Smash Mouth is the ultimate soundtrack band.
They really kind of are. A lot of soundtracks they've been on, and good for them.
Good for them. I mean, there is a legitimate argument to be made that they just have that perfect kind of commercial sound, which is probably why you hear them twice. You get Walking on the Sun, and then you also get their cover of Can't Get Enough of You, Baby, which was recorded for this movie.
Oh, nice.
Requested and recorded for this film, I believe.
Yeah, I feel like they're the perfect sort of like inoffensive, but you can play it at like a backyard barbecue sort of band, like kind of fit everywhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I have kids, 10 and 13, and they've seen all the Shrek movies.
Yeah.
And so they go around and they sing Smash Mouth. And I'm just like, what is happening? They also like Rick Astley. It's just Rick rolled. Oh, the Rick roll song. So it's super weird. Anyway, that's a side note. But yeah, the way that my kids are singing along to the songs that I grew up with is just kind of bananas to me, but also very cool.
Oh, just speaking of Rickrolling, we were at so I have kids too. We were at a birthday party for a 5-year-old yesterday, and there's a slideshow that they showed us at the end of the party. And at one point, Hamster Dance came on.
Oh my God.
And I leaned over to my wife and I said, "This is like the original Rickroll. Like, this is what you would like send to people to piss them off in like 1998."
But of course, like our kids don't know that. Like Gen Alpha has no idea like the origin of some of these things. So they just find kind of these new resurrected life in like TikTok culture. I feel like Smash Mouth's a really good example of that. And there's a high possibility that because they are so inoffensive and so kind of multi-use that they will be it's just eternal forever, which is a weird thing to say about Smash Mouth because they got such a bad rap for so long, and I think nobody was like if you were trying to be cool, you weren't actively listening to Smash Mouth. You weren't like a
Yeah.
Smash Mouth fan, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't pull the Smash Mouth CD out of your gigantic
No.
CD case in your car and then put it in the disc player with the the bass
With the
boom. You didn't do
finger
that on
in
Friday
your
night.
Jedi? Yeah, no, you didn't
Yeah.
do that. No, you did not do that. Nobody at Nick Pezapane's New Year's Eve party was lobbying to play Smash Mouth. Let's put it that
No
way.
one's demanding that they re-release Smash Mouth on vinyl for Record Store Day.
Right, exactly. But at the same time, they have this very kind of like outsized presence in popular culture.
Mm-hmm.
So there you
Yeah.
go. You know, what more legacy can you ask for?
Yeah,
Um,
I never would have expected that. I mean, like I said, good for them. But like, yeah, in 98, 99, I never would have thought that we'd be sitting here talking about the legacy of Smash Mouth in 2024. I mean, that's
No.
amazing.
Absolutely not.
I was just going to say that in rewatching this movie, sidetrack kind of aside, this movie felt very like the 90s 16 Candles. A lot of like parallels. There's like a big party. You've got kind of like your quote nobody, for lack of a better term, a non-popular crushing on a popular. The popular one kind of like, I don't know if I'm really down with this lifestyle anymore, kind of waning from their partner. You get all your little cliques and tropes of high school kids from foreign exchange student, nerds, jocks, all of these things. And I never really thought about that. And then, of course, the crazy wild party where everything gets trashed. And of course, you know, the underage drinking and the homophobia. So I was like, this is very, very like, I never realized. I was like, is this our, you know, like 90s teens, 16 Candles? And I'm like, was that on purpose? Why am I just now realizing all of this?
I think it was, though, on purpose. I think that filmmakers have expressed, like, yeah, we were kind of explicitly trying to make our version of a John Hughes film, to try to update John Hughes for that generation. So I'm pretty sure that was the intention, but the thing about the homophobia, they were maybe a little too true to the source material.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
A little too much.
Yeah, there was a couple things about them making this film. You know, obviously they wanted to reference things like Say Anything and the John Hughes films, but also because they were first-time writers, or they were first-time directors, they were trying to find an idea that was cheap enough that they could convince a studio to let them direct their own script. Because I think they had previously written a very Brady sequel, but they didn't direct it, and they wanted to get in the director's chair, and they're like, well, what can we do that is cheap enough? And they realized, like, well, if we did a movie that's about a party where you have, you know, minimal locations, maybe we could get a studio to back that. And because of the success of Scream, people were like, oh, let's do more teen movies. And then it wasn't that hard of a sell at that point. But the initial idea came from like, well, if we just shot a party and that was like the whole movie, maybe we can convince someone to take a risk.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Did not know that. All these fun facts. And the party was just, it was like so 90s. I think I'd only really been to like one house party that, and it didn't even hit that level of like insanity or number of people, but it was a small house. It was crammed full of high school kids. There were people hooking up that did not associate with each other during school hours. And now all of a sudden they're all making out and everything. And then nothing on Monday. And this movie is just so, why is this movie so like perfectly 90s? I mean, obviously it was made in the 90s, but
it's also like I know everybody says this, and I sound like such a boomer saying this, but nobody's on their phone, right? And so there's kind of a weird, like, there is no social media, there is like no distraction. This is sort of how you kill time, although I never went to a party like this. I think you're way cooler than I am, Jen. Because Nick Pezapane's party was like the peak of my existence up to that point in time. And I was not accepting the margaritas because I was like the nerd kid that was like, you could get drunk. You could get addicted if you like have beer.
You could go to jail.
I was not about to take that ride.
you didn't have the little card to say how much you could drink and like
No,
William did?
I hadn't done any of that math because it never would have entered my head to
No.
drink at a high school party. So, Ryan, did you ever drink at a high school party? I feel like this is important.
I did not drink. I did go to a high school party the day before graduation. I think it's the only time I ever really got invited to one. And I was kind of just like on the outside. I didn't see what was going on inside if people were making out and things like that. But I do remember seeing our valedictorian the day before graduation, drunk and having like an existential crisis. So our William was just like, I don't know. I was like, oh, cool. Like, you're valedictorian. You got to give a big speech tomorrow. And he was just like, what is life?
Oh, no.
Where do we go from here?
Where is he now? Did you look him up on Facebook? Is he okay?
No, his name is like Matt Davis, so it's impossible to find.
Oh, God, yeah.
Matt Davis, if you're listening, let us know if you're okay.
I mean, he was fine. I remember his graduation speech was not memorable, but it was prepared. Like, it wasn't like a train wreck of like, oh, I didn't have it. It was just, boilerplate, like,
Matt was a high achiever.
to the future.
Mhm.
But that night before, he was drunk and just like, it wasn't like he was panicked. It was just like, who gives a fuck?
I mean, one thing that I
Love
do
it.
think was real is this idea of having, not that the archetypes are totally real, they're exaggerated, but obviously like high school is made up of clans. It's made up of, people within their kind of individual bubbles, depending on your personality and who you associate with. And I do remember, so there's that whole thing in Can't Hardly Wait where the jock guys are breaking up with their girlfriends because they think they're going to go to college and like get way better girlfriends, which is gross and misogynistic and weird. And that never happened to me, but I do remember when I was a senior in high school, I kind of lost a friend that way. Like I lost a really close friend and she was like, you know what? I'm going to UCLA. I don't really think we're going to be friends next year. So this should probably just like end. And it was like at a dance.
Oh, oh my God.
We all came like together, like as a group to the dance. And I remember being like, oh, okay. I don't really know how to have a comeback for that. I guess you'll be 40 miles away. So yeah, we should end this here.
Let me start just
so
tearing
mean.
out things out of my Rolodex. Like,
Right? It was
done,
super
done,
fucked up
done.
and mean. And anyway.
Wow.
But also like really practical.
Right. I was almost like so stunned. I'm like, I guess I have to respect it. I don't
She was honest, I guess. So there's that.
It was honest. I remember thinking like, wow, this is okay. She thinks I have nowhere to go but down.
Oh my gosh. I think the closest I got to that was my senior year. There was a sophomore and we were kind of sweet on each other, but I wasn't entirely sure where I was going to go in the fall. I registered late for community college and then I went for 2 weeks because since I registered late, I had all morning classes a half an hour away. And I was like, that's dumb. But I still, I wasn't sure, he still had a couple years of high school and we had actually like talked about it and we're like, this could be fun for like the summer or whatever. But then, what are we going to do kind of after that? So we had like a sweet night. Like we just kind of snuggled. It was really sweet. And then I never saw him again. But
one last snug for the road.
That's right.
So it's angsty stuff like that, though, definitely was on my mind rewatching this and in present day. Like, yeah, I remember how angsty it felt in 1999. I also remember, with apologies to Smash Mouth and everybody else on the soundtrack, I remember how shitty I thought all of the music on popular top 40. Like, I just remember thinking, this is the shittiest shit. I hope that we get something better. And I also remember being really, really into things from the past. So some of the stuff that they dip into from like the 70s and 80s, I thought that was cool. That was what was cool to me. But like the idea of having to listen to Sublime as like a kid from Orange County was out of the question. Out of the question. Caress Me Down couldn't be like more stomach turning. Still, I think to this day, because it brings me back to like, oh fuck, that song's so gross. Those people that listen to that song are so gross.
So gross. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Yeah, I kind of forgot that Sublime was on this soundtrack. And oh my gosh, yeah, and they had like Boys to Men and everything. But I always felt like our graduating class, 99, we culturally appropriated the 70s, and that's all Dazed and Confused's fault.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
So many girls went as, the popular girls with the tall socks and yelling like air raid and everything. And I'm shopping at Ragstock, and I had like the sweetest pair of bell bottoms, and they were like straight out of Dazed and Confused, where I did kind of have to lay on the bed and zip them up. So all these little bits in this movie of like, you got your stoner kids and the tie-dyes and everything felt very like, yes, that's exactly what we did. We brought the 70s back and we're like, this is ours now.
Yeah, I had.
And also in this movie, you also had way too many white kids pretending to be Eminem.
Oh my God.
And that's also completely relatable. Like the Junko jeans that Seth Green is in, his black scent, like it's all super embarrassing, but also like something that was fairly real at the time.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I'm sad to say.
Yeah. I had my fair share of the Jinko jeans, and I don't know why. I'm like my mother now. I'm like, I looked ridiculous. What was I thinking? But at the time it was kind of like those baggier pants, and then like maybe like a crocheted top or crop top, like
Crop top.
spaghetti straps, little plastic hair clippies and butter, like all of that stuff. Raver culture as well in the late 90s.
Frank, you have some Paul Frank gear? I did.
No, I did not. No.
I didn't even know what it meant because I wasn't going to raves. I was like 16. But there were girls who were, and I would be like, I want to be cool like them. And then I found out later, like if you had like raver gear, you were like going to raves and like doing drugs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't go to raves in high school. I went to one after high school, and I did not care for it. So maybe I was starting to slip into my olds. Yeah, I was like, no, there's too many people, and it's loud, and it's hot. But yeah, that was very much, I remember, the pacifiers and all the necklaces and like plastic whistles.
Candy necklaces.
Yes. Oh my God. Ring pops.
Yeah, and I do think though that you said earlier, Jen, the costuming is really like pretty accurate to the era. So for those that didn't live it, I do think it represents a pretty good cross section. They did a pretty good job representing, I think, what people were actually wearing, doing, looking like. Like it definitely brings me back. It's realistic. Also, I remember there's like a pair of khaki pants that Jennifer Love Hewitt's character is wearing at the end of the film when she gets together with Embry. They are the worst looking khaki pants. Like they just do her no justice. Like they are the most.
Like it's an interesting outfit that she's wearing in general at the end of the movie.
In general, right? It's because it's like her serious outfit, right? She's a serious person. She wants to be taken seriously, and so therefore that translates to like some fucking ugly khakis. And they are so sensible. Bad. Like, I can't. She looks like she works at like a Best Buy. They're like that khaki. Yes. And I know because I was a tutor for a place that did tutoring for like high school and junior high kids. I think around that same era, and they made you wear khakis as part of the uniform. It was like khakis and a polo. So I went right back there in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, those fucking ugly khakis. Did they not know how to make pants in 1999?
But that tank top she's wearing throughout most of the movie, that's like an iconic, that sky blue tank top.
Mm-hmm. Yes. You can probably buy that at Urban right now.
I just want to add, since we're talking about costuming, the costume designer, I want to say his name is Mark. Let me pull it up. What is his name?
Yeah, because it's like when you watch movies or shows that are made now that are supposed to take place in the 80s or 90s, they don't ever really get it right. It's like a caricature. And it's like, yes, we were kind of weird and we had a lot going on in the late 90s and, even the looks in the 80s. But it's like, you see the memes and it's like shit was way more brown and smoky filled. It wasn't all neons and shit like that. So I think that if people are going to make a movie about the 90s now, this is the movie they should study in terms of costuming.
Yes.
Because across the board.
Let me add. So costume designer Mark Bridges Oscar-winning Mark Bridges.
Hey.
He ended up winning the Oscar for costume design for Phantom Thread.
Which is
Paul Thomas Anderson.
Roommate Threadhead's at such a great film in all respects. But that's cool. Wow.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, takes a special eye for detail, right? And for like that verisimilitude of like, yeah, this is what people actually look like. Also, interestingly, this movie and Empire Records, I guess, were on the mood board for Olivia Rodrigo's music video for that one song that's really popular of hers that I'm like totally blanking on right now. People will know. But so I think for her, that was the blueprint, right? It's the blueprint of like, this is the 90s. This is what it looks like. So when we're making this music video, this is what we're going to reference.
Perfect. Couldn't have picked two better movies to have for 90s inspiration.
And Ethan Embry's in both.
Yes. So I had the biggest crush on him when I was a teen. So yeah. Empire Records, Mark, and then this one, Preston. Loved his jacket at the end. For some reason, out of all the things in this movie, I always think about the jacket he wears at the train station because it's got that vintage kind of 70s look and feel to it. Yeah. It's just kind of a standout piece, especially with what he's wearing. And only now did I realize he was wearing like slacks himself. I don't know why I always thought jeans.
No, but they're wearing almost like identical pants. It's really weird.
Super weird.
It's really weird.
And that almost... Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm just going to continue down that. It really weirded me out. Like, it was very noticeable to me.
Same. I had that kind of same reaction this time watching. I was like, when has it been slacks? When has he... I thought it's always been... I guess I've just been too focused on the jacket. But yeah, I was like, they are kind of dressed very... Maybe they both have a shift at Best Buy later or something.
Maybe Mark Bridges was like, we need to show them to be like more the same, like compatible. So they both really like slacks.
I mean, that makes sense. The visual symmetry of it, I suppose, makes sense. But yeah, there were some really, really bad pants then. It gave me like Express flashbacks.
Mm-hmm.
So I read that Ethan Embry was not initially considered for the lead role. Like he had to convince them like, no, I want to read for this. And they're like, well, I think they were looking for like a more standard, like just leading man sort of type. But I think when he did the reading for it, like they're like, oh, this works. Cause Preston's a little creepy, right? Like he's never actually like met Amanda, but like can write her like this letter that's going to move her later. Like, and I know it's very on par, like for high school. Like I probably identify too much with Preston more than I like to admit. But, like you have to have like sort of an innocence and a charm to not be like, well, this guy's just a piece of shit.
Mm-hmm.
He sells it. No, you're right. Like an innocence and charm is, I think, what he sells throughout this movie, because it could easily go creepy stalker. And on paper, it kind of is.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Who else was considered? I'm curious. Do you know? Because I honestly can't picture anybody else in that role. And maybe that's just me because of growing up with the movie and everything. But he does. He's more adorable and sweet than creepy. Like the creepiness is still there, especially now watching it. And you're just like, dude, calm down. But in the 90s, as a teen, as a hormonal teen, I was like, oh my God, he's so sweet. He's loved her all these years and from afar. Now it's like, dude, relax.
I know that. I think I had the same, right? I think movies like this kind of led us all astray a little bit. I think maybe we all had standards for dudes that were way too low for a moment there.
Yeah. Again, I blame the 70s and like Dazed and Confused and leading us to think that like stoners were great and like cool and like everyone was like Slater and Dazed and Confused or something. Like they weren't.
No, it didn't really pan out that way. Also, there's this weird thing where like Giovanni Ribisi, Breckin Meyer, and Ethan Embry are all kind of the same person in my head. And sometimes I think they all came out of the same factory. And I can't totally separate like who was who in what place.
Oh my God.
That will
You're
mean
right.
nothing to most people.
I'm not going to be able to unsee that.
Which is funny because Breckenmeyer was supposed to have a bigger role in this film. They wanted
Right.
him to be Kenny, which went to Seth Green, but he was shooting 54 at the time.
Right. And Breckenmeyer was dating one of the directors,
Yeah,
I think,
Deborah
at the time
Kaplan.
too. So so there was a whole thing there. Yeah, the band in this movie is really funny. Isn't there some overlap with the band in this movie and one of the bands in like the Pussycat Dolls too?
No, in Josie and the Pussycats.
Not the Pussycat Dolls.
Yeah. So
Sorry.
the
Obviously, my
band.
head is too It's like my head is full of too much '90s bullshit. Josie and the Pussycat.
Yeah.
The movie.
So in Josie and the Pussycats, there's a boy band called De Jour, and it is Breckenmeyer, Seth Green, Donald Faison, and I believe the foreign exchange student. They make up
Oh wow.
the boy band, and they're in there for like 3 or 4 scenes. They make a funny cameo. Like they open the movie, and it's a total like NSYNC Backstreet Boys like video for, I believe the song is called Backseat Lover.
That's
So they make a cameo in that. So that's kind of the time. I love how the band breaks up and reunites without ever playing a single note in this movie.
Right? That always puts me too, because I was waiting for it. I was like, wait, do they really not play a song? It's honestly kind of brilliant.
I agree. And rewatching it, and when they come back and do their, for old time's sake, one last song, one of the originals, I'm just dying laughing. I'm like, I love how they have like that whole band experience in this one night. They are so stinking adorable. Love Burger, like what a goofy ass name.
Yeah, I'm
But
gonna put
high
up
school.
I'm gonna put up a Twitter quiz of what is like the best fake band name from the '90s. Like there's Love Burger and the Lone Rangers from Airheads and yeah, that's my bike from Reality Bites.
Is it Yeah, That's My Bike or Hey, That's My Bike?
Or Hey, That's My Bike.
Hey,
Doesn't
That's My
matter.
Bike is getting in my boat. Just so we're clear. Yeah, it's funny. Like the only moment that you get of somebody singing, not singing, but like music at the parties, is when you get that Paradise City by Guns and Roses moment, which is right. Like, isn't that kind of the only, which is great. It's fun. It's great. Love a little GNR.
It's great because what William says right before he starts singing it, he says, "I tutored a kid in math that made me listen to this song." And I think there's just like little bits here and there where they add like just a line of dialogue that just makes it so much funnier. Like when he spits out the beer and he goes, "The beer's gone bad."
That's by far, I think, the funniest moment of the movie for me. But everything that his character does is good. It's gold.
Yeah. I love that the Paradise City bit. And I always just, in my mind, the guy that started playing it was the guy William had tutored. That's just, they don't ever specifically say that, but that dude was really all about Guns N' Roses and Paradise City. So I'm like, oh, it had to have been that guy.
And I think that's the only time he shows up in the movie.
Yeah.
Right? That's so true. Also, I feel like GNR was a good fill-in for like juvenile delinquency at that point in time.
Yeah,
right?
pre-Chinese democracy GNR. Yep.
Before they ruined it with that. And then there are a lot of songs on here that feel, at least to me, and you can check me on this, but I feel like they feel very suburban, right? Like 311 is here, Creed is here. Like to me, those all feel very like that's what you're playing if you live like in the suburbs, right? If you're like in the high school suburbs, which they are in this film. I don't know where this film is set. Do they ever say?
I think it's supposed to be like Anytown, USA, but I believe the directors are from like a suburb of Pennsylvania, so it kind of reflects that. Though the train station at the end is very clearly Union Station, downtown Los Angeles.
Right. It throws me a lot because there are scenes where I'm like, I know where that is, but then they're not playing it like it's in Southern California anywhere. So anyway, Ryan and I have this kind of ongoing joke that like you've seen 311 live in concert, whether you wanted to or not, because they were like so ubiquitous.
But I haven't.
Yeah, you haven't. I have. At an almost Acoustic Christmas, a K-Rock almost acoustic Christmas concert in 1999.
And you're very upset
Not on
at the
purpose.
fact that somehow I have avoided 311.
Yeah, because it feels like something that was unavoidable. They were inevitable in this period of time. One of those bands that were just, you couldn't throw a rock without being force-fed 311. But what is interesting is that I guess Elektra Records released the soundtrack initially. So while there are like 50 some odd songs that are in the film, there were only like 20 or so that made the official soundtrack. And the ones that didn't make the soundtrack were the artists that surprised were not on Elektra. So you don't get 311, you don't get like, you know, Yaz, you don't get a lot of the artists on that original soundtrack release.
Yeah, and I know the soundtrack did pretty well. I think it ended up going gold. I remember like it being pretty popular on MTV and in high school, but I don't remember like the order of the singles. Like obviously the Smash Mouth song, "Can't Get Enough of You Baby," I remember that being popular, but like that Busta Rhymes song, I was like, is that from Can't Hardly Wait? I remember that song. I remember the Feeder song being a single. I remember seeing Feeder like open for Everclear like a year before, and then being super like surprised that like they were now this MTV band with this ballad from Can't Hardly Wait.
I'm kind of surprised Everclear's not here, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
I
they're
don't
not on
recall
Elektra.
like.
No, there you go.
Yeah, I don't recall like a specific song off this soundtrack. I just, because I have the CD, and now the DVD. So it's just, they were all there for me. And then I had like an Eve 6 album because I did like Eve 6. I don't know if there's a lot of us. But yeah, it's a shame too that some of these other songs and artists didn't make it because you hear them in the movie, you know, Boys to Men, D-Light, and it's just a shame because I think it really could have like elevated the soundtrack. Like it did really well and everything, but you've got these other bands and these other songs that I would have just added to it. And since a lot of these songs play during like certain scenes, I mean, they all do, but I feel like they would have done a better job, I think, maybe bringing you back into those moments in the movie, because that's what music does. And a great soundtrack for a great movie does that easily. You turn it on and bam, you time travel and you're there. And while I personally do have that with this soundtrack, I think it would have been much more like, whoa, if all of the other songs had been included. But it's still a great soundtrack and I still love it.
Yeah, I'm surprised that it credits anyone for scoring this movie. I think Matthew Sweet has a credit on here. But like it's so just jam packed with needle drops that it's like, is there a score? Like I can't really like think of a moment where I'm like, oh, here is musical score. It is just like song after song, because it's a party, right? So you just feel like you're in this party and there's always a song going on, except in like the brief moments where the band is supposed to like be playing. That's like the only time you wouldn't have music going.
But even the few scenes where you're not at the party, where you're at the train station or you're riding around in Ethan Embry's car, like there is no scoring.
Yeah, he's still listening to Barry Manilow and wondering if it's about a dog or a person named Amanda.
Right.
Which is a good gag.
It's a good question. I wanted to look it up and then I didn't. Who is Mandy about? Now I feel like it's going to be some weird answer. It's going to be a gross answer, isn't it? It's going to be
I feel like it's going to be a gross answer.
An answer I don't want.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to be sorry I looked under the rock.
Let me see what Genius says. Oh, it's a cover. So it's not even his song.
What?
That's even better.
Who sings Mandy originally?
So, so he recorded a cover of Mandy, which is originally called Brandy, which was sung initially by co-writer Scott English and later by Bunny Walters. But Barry changed the title to Mandy to avoid confusion with the Looking Glasses song, Brandy, You're a Fine Girl.
That's a good idea.
So, man, Preston would be devastated.
It's a good thing Jenna Elfman hung up the phone. Ended his call. That would have been the end of Preston. Poor Preston.
Poor Preston. You know what's interesting though about Preston, who is Ethan Embry's character, who's all love struck over Jennifer Love Hewitt. You guys are gonna have to forgive me because I don't know these characters' names. It's not.
Her name is Mandy.
The show. Oh, that right, but it's like Amanda, right? Not Mandy. Nobody's calling her Mandy. Anyway.
No.
What's interesting is that I feel like all of the songs that are kind of definitively his, where he's driving around, he's being introspective about his feelings for Amanda, they're all older songs. They're all things that have kind of a bigger emotional heft to them. So it's like Romeo and Juliet by Dire Straits. It's Only You by Yaz that you get at the end of the train station when they actually get together. It's Mandy by Barry Manilow, right? Like he gets a lot of Love Hurts by Nazareth. Like he doesn't get new songs, which I found really interesting.
He's an old soul.
That is really interesting.
It's reflective of that, right? Like I think the movie's trying to telegraph to you, like Preston is not listening to Sublime.
He's not like these other kids.
He's not like the popular guys that are listening to Creed. You know what I found weird too? Like, here's a weird thing that I caught. So like, I can't name the movies off the top of my head, but Six Underground by Sneaker Pimps, I feel like was a really popular choice in soundtracking around this time. Why is it the song that introduces Jennifer Love Hewitt? Like when you get the yearbook picture and then you get like the snapshot of her and who she is, like it's a really weird choice to me. Why is that her song?
Why did she get trip hop? She doesn't seem like a trip hop kind of girl.
Doesn't seem like a trip hop at all. Like, no. Like, why would she get that? It's very weird to me.
Really good question.
Maybe she's dead and that's why she's 6 underground.
It had no relation to anything. I'm like, do they just need like a place to put this? Weird. And then when they pause on her yearbook, so like of its time, her like high school yearbook quote is from Jewel.
I thought that was brilliant, actually.
Because she's deep like that.
Yes.
Didn't Jewel just like had recently
perfect.
like released a book of poetry or something? I feel like that was something that happened in the 90s.
Probably. I mean, I don't know the exact time frame, but yeah, probably.
Because there was that infamous like Kurt Loder interview where like he asked her like what some word in one of her poems meant and she like didn't know. And then everyone ran with like Jewel's an idiot. Which is instead of like Kurt Loder's kind of an asshole to like this is not an expose interview on like Jewel's vocabulary. Like it's a weird thing to kind of like mention during an interview. Like, hey, you use this word wrong. Can you tell me what it means?
A Night Without Armor was the name of her poetry book.
Also very 90s.
But N-I-G-H-T, night.
I would hope so.
Get it?
Yeah.
It was a weird time, okay?
Opposed to an evening without armor? Like, what does that even mean?
Or an afternoon without armor?
I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying. I think a night without armor implies like a medieval night, but it's not spelled like that. So it's super, super deep. I see what she did there.
So,
extremely deep.
So Jen, you of the Eve 6 fandom back in the day. I'm not saying
back in the day. Yep.
So I was watching the movie on Amazon Prime, and I like to use the X-ray every now and then to see what song is playing and stuff like that. We are a soundtrack podcast. And the movie begins with Open Road Song by Eve 6, which is not on the soundtrack. And then Amazon added the factoid that, like, it is like them kind of paying tribute to the song Can't Hardly Wait, the song about, like, the open road.
Didn't catch that similarity. Should you ask
I did not either.
The guy on Twitter? Can we ask him? We can try.
We can try. That is quite the career pivot.
Right? Just being like really great at Twitter, which I think should be like an Olympic sport. I think if you're really great on Twitter, like you should, him and like the menswear guy, Drill, like everybody that's really good on Twitter.
Everyone else is so much better at Twitter than like I am. I'm terrible at it, but
I don't even try.
There's like an elite
really.
group of people that are just like a task force almost keeping Twitter even remotely passable as a platform.
I just
I
like
got it.
following all
You know?
these. Let me prove to you that The Bear is a comedy.
That's your sector of Twitter. Also, I just want to say regarding Eve 6, I don't think that you were alone in owning that. I had that CD for sure. Also,
Mhm.
like Inside Out was a huge song. I remember it being massive.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. The video played all the time. The song played all the time. And I still remember the video. It's like he's in a diner and it's raining and he's turning inside out. And
Yeah, I remember I
Oh.
remember that
Putting his
album
heart
being
behind it.
huge, but I don't remember like it having 5 singles.
Yeah.
I honestly can't name, I don't think I could name another song off of that album. I may have bought the album for the one song and
I think there's that Here's
just
to the
listen to
Night
that.
song. I think they played that at prom, maybe. They had like one of those kind of ballady songs, I think that was kind of popular.
I think you're right. But yeah, I was just going to say, I think Eve 6, especially at that time, was also kind of one of those bands that you didn't really admit out loud outside of like maybe your trusted group of friends. Otherwise, you'd be ridiculed. You know, they weren't like rock or whatever music snobs back in the day considered. So it just kind of, for me, just kind of got buried. But I remembered after I moved to Madison, Eve 6 played, and I didn't go to the show, but my neighbor was going to the show or something where we kind of talked and joked. I was like, well, you got to bring him back to the apartment. We could party with them and this and that. Of course, it didn't happen, but I was like, I absolutely was ready to party with Eve 6 in probably early 2000s, late 99 or something around there. And I'm a little bummed it didn't happen, but
In
it's
2024,
all
they'd be
right.
asking to sleep on your couch.
Well, we do have a pull-out couch, so they are welcome to
Well,
to
it
crash
was
there.
it was a weird time for rock music. There's this little moment in Can't Hardly Wait where there's a reference to like, oh, I can't break up with my girlfriend because she got us Pearl Jam tickets in August.
Her parents
And I'm
did.
like, were we still right? The parents did. I'm like, oh, were we still talking about Pearl Jam in 1999? Because really at that point, like they're kind of the last surviving, not disbanded, no one's dead, like grunge era band, and everything else is
Mhm.
kind of like it's the
And
remnants
like
of
Foo Fighters
that
are still
you're
like too
sifting
new.
through. Well,
Mhm.
Foo Fighters like had just become a thing, so I don't think that was established enough to really be like, you know, rooted in like a fandom. So instead, you got Eve 6, you got Creed, you got bands like Fuel, like Everclear. You know, like there was this whole like explosion of like bands that had like one or two really great singles that got like the shit promoted out of them, but not really any like iconic rock bands. And then the indie scene exploded, and then everything kind of, you know, receded again. So it was a weird time just to be like into music at all. Like it was hard to attach yourself to anything in a way
Mhm.
that was greater than just like, I like the strength of that one single. I'm gonna like buy the CD, throw it in my
Mhm.
6-disc changer.
Look
Ooh,
at
6
yeah.
discs.
Like I had
It was
I had
more
a
of one disc
Discman with a
changer then.
tape thing.
Yep.
Actually, I think my 6-disc didn't come around until like maybe the early aughts. So don't come at me on Twitter.
Oh, multi-disc. God, those things would jam all the time. And then it's like if you had one that was like more than 6 discs, like I had a friend that had like 100-disc changer. Fuck trying to
Whoa.
find what you're looking for. That was too like it's
What a
great you
mess.
had a place to put all your CDs, but I am not picking a song.
And if you changed
Just
from like 1 to like
unnecessary.
disc 99, it would be like 15 minutes.
Oh my God, yeah.
That's such a weird flex, 100-disc changer. I remember having the
Yep.
6-disc one, and I remember the commitment of like, what 6 are you going to put in? And then because you're not going to go to your trunk and change it. So those 6 discs,
Mhm.
you better be like committed to them for like a full 3 to 6 months.
Mhm. Yep.
Because that's it.
And no one listens to all
I
6.
love that they went in the trunk.
No, not really.
End up
No.
just
Unless they
listening to
had,
4.
Yeah, unless they had like a hidden track. Because at that point, like CDs still had hidden tracks.
Mm-hmm. Oh, those are great. Would scare the shit out of me, but loved them.
Oh, what's happening?
Oh, that's right.
Well, so there was this band in the 90s called Ash. They're an Irish band, and their secret track, which was like 10 minutes after the last song ended, was just them vomiting in the studio.
No.
Stop it.
No, I'm serious. They were just like drunk and just like recording themselves just vomiting over and over again.
That's
Oh
so
my
And like
God.
laughing at
I
each
would
other.
say something deep about how, like, wow, look at what gets lost to time, physical media, but maybe it's okay that we lost that.
I mean, usually you don't get the Ash secret track, but if you listen to Ash's 1977, that is the secret track that you get.
Kind of amazing.
That is disgustingly hilarious. I love
I mean,
it.
when I was like, 15, 16 at like sleep, like we all thought it was great.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Well, that's the kind of stuff you live for at that age.
Mm-hmm.
The knowledge.
So apart from like weird fashion and homophobia, one thing that kind of caught my radar watching this movie is the whole like cousin like trying to kiss you thing, which happened a couple years later on Friends, where like Ross tries to make out with his cousin. I was like, why did anyone ever think this was funny?
Why? Ew, what? That's ew. Sorry. I don't know. I got nothing on that one, but the incest jokes were really kind of around then. And I don't know. Did Game of Thrones ruin incest jokes or incest ruin incest jokes? But
Yeah, I think
I
incest.
feel like but yeah, well, ew. But yeah, the cousin thing was really, really weird because that was his flex. He comes up, he's like, but we're cousins and should be able to talk about this kind of stuff. And then he goes to kiss her and she's like, you're my cousin. He's like, by marriage? Like, no, it doesn't matter. You have that title. You have that family title. You need to stay over there. That was
and
gross.
he's clearly like a few years older than her. Like, I mean, maybe in the movie he's not, but you can clearly tell he's older. And I don't know. It's just pretty cringy all the way through. Like this movie was at one point rated R, and they had to cut out stuff like drinking and people doing drugs, which I think is just weed. But they had to like pare it down for the PG-13 rating, and it's like, oh, but let's keep the incest scene.
Yeah, right. But in some of the retrospectives where they talk to the cast, one of the things that they say is, yeah, we were kind of bitter when we saw, films like Superbad get really popular because I think this movie opened at I think it peaked at number 4 in the box office or something. It didn't, I think, get huge until it went to DVD, and then it kind of took on another life, but it didn't do like crazy numbers at the box office. And who knows, what might have happened if it had been more of an American Pie, if it had been more R-rated as they had originally intended. But that didn't happen.
I'd be interested to see. I mean, if it's only just drinking and smoking pot scenes, then that really isn't going to add to the overall movie. But it would be interesting to see what an R-rated version of Can't Hardly Wait looked like if it was something more on the lines of American Pie, because that was like our generation's first gross out, super inappropriate, not age well.
Yeah,
movie.
I am kind of sad to tell you and anyone else who doesn't have this forbidden knowledge that this is Jason Segel's film debut, which is also something that X-Ray on Prime Video loves to tell you, but this is his first movie, and he plays this stoner character that is kind of like, I don't know, stony and for reasons unexplained eating a watermelon. And I guess there was a part of the movie where he has sexual relations with the watermelon that they cut
my
out.
God.
Yeah. Well, saves him the title Watermelon Fucker for the rest of his career.
Right?
Yep.
But he's also in the credits, he's just credited as Watermelon Guy. He doesn't even have a name.
Yeah.
So it's very clear that they intended him to be a fruit fucker. And that's it. He was a gag and it got cut out.
And I love how all the party goers they have those names. Like they don't have actual character names. It's drunk girl and like girl who wants to have sex and girl who wants to have sex's friend, which was Leslie Grossman, which I love her. So it's always fun to go back and watch these movies and see people before they got super famous. But I thought that was so funny, and like it was probably more of like a time saver thing. Why give these characters actual names, and we'll just refer to them as what they're doing on screen. But I feel like also in the late 90s, as much as I feel like we were trying to move away from like being labeled as certain things, we were still very much about the labels. And so having these characters just being labeled as what they're doing in the scene, I thought it was very interesting and very, very 90s again. And they just, watching it now, it's like, it's a time capsule of the late 90s and everything good and bad that went on and we did and all of that. And so it's just so much fun to go back and watch these and kind of pick up on some of these things that I definitely did not pick up on as a stupid hormonal 17-year-old. I'm now a slightly less stupid hormonal 40-something-year-old.
Well, I think it's funny, the girl who throws the party, who has lines and shows up throughout, she's just girl who threw the party.
No, she has no name.
Yep.
It's pretty great. It seems pretty equal opportunity. Like it's not gendered or anything.
Yeah.
Like just everybody is no better than the stereotype or the box that they've put in when it comes to a lot of these auxiliary characters. And I do think they probably cut out some stuff, if I had to guess, where Jennifer Love Hewitt's character is even more objectified than she is already in this film. Like
I could see that. Mm-hmm. Oh God. The second like she declares that she is done with Mike, and they all just come out of the woodwork and ew.
Yeah,
poor girl, just let her leave.
Right, just let her live. And it also makes me think of this being kind of the era of like Maxim magazine, right? Where like that was, I'm sure she had like a spread out of like you couldn't not, like it's what you did for publicity at that time. So everything was kind of like geared towards the male gaze in this era. And it shows through in this movie, but it's not as bad as I think other media from the same time.
And other teen movies, honestly.
I agree. Yeah. One thing I thought was kind of interesting in this rewatch, and maybe it's just because it's my 40-year-old hard to see in eyeballs, but it seems like we've got our two female leads, Denise, played by Lauren Ambrose, and Amanda, Jennifer Love Hewitt. And these girls are, while they're still in high school and they're still there's an uncertainty about what they want to do in their future and yada, yada, they are so much more together and well put than like all of these boys.
All of them. Like, that's why I was like, I'm pretty sure like we didn't have high enough standards based on movies like this because, wow, yeah, like none of the dudes in this movie have any clue what the fuck is going on. Lauren Ambrose is like very together, and they don't really give a footnote about this at the end when they're like, oh, she broke up with him. And then 10 minutes later, they found a bathroom and they got back together. And I'm like, I really hope that like they didn't stay together. Lauren Ambrose can do so much better. I'm sorry.
Yes. But I thought that was very cute. They're childhood friends and everything. And it's Kenny's first time. So it's someone he knows and trusts. So I was kind of happy for him in that sense. But it also felt like a lot of these boys, like Kenny, he's out there, he's trying to get laid and all of this, and he's got this front and this fake ass persona and everything. And finally, Denise, they have their moment locked in the bathroom. She calls him out on his cultural appropriation, and so he stops, and they kind of have that moment, they're reminiscing, and it's like these boys in this movie want to be seen for who they are, but they're too afraid to put out who they are, except for maybe Preston. Whereas you have the girls, Amanda questions who she is when she's not Mike's girlfriend, but at least she's there asking the question.
There's a self-awareness
Whereas yes, right. and Mike is in total denial. Poor William, he thinks, he's out for revenge and everything, but he gets drunk and him and Mike kind of have like that sweet buddy moment where they seem to kind of understand each other. And so now we have these two boys that are letting their guard down, being vulnerable, but Mike doesn't change and he doesn't learn anything. And poor William kind of gets his bestie heartbroken at the end. And it's just really sad to see that. But these boys they didn't know what they want. They were not as self-aware as the girls in this movie. And I thought that was really interesting for a 90s teen movie.
Yeah, it's honest, actually. Like, I felt like the end was pretty honest. And some of the interactions, particularly between Lauren and Kenny, they're sort of true to life, or true to, I think, what maybe young guys were struggling with at that time. Or maybe still. I don't know. I knew a lot of Kennys and I knew a lot of Mikes. Let's leave it. Let's just put it there. I remember having a friend that I grew up with. And I grew up in like suburban North Orange County, okay? Like, not a farm to be seen. And I remember this dude in high school like suddenly went full cowboy, and he was Jewish too, so he like just started coming up with like in like cowboy hats, like the jeans and like the boots.
Don't knock it. Donald Faison looked great in that cowboy hat.
I'm just saying, like, how weird is that, right? Like, but it's a struggling with your identity thing and where you fit in, and you know, you're not comfortable in your own skin at that point. So you're trying on like literal or figurative like hats.
And keeping a copy of the Kama Sutra in your Love Kid backpack.
Love Kid is so gross. Also, that Kama Sutra reminds me of like going to the Barnes and Noble. Did you guys do this when you were little or young? Not little. Would you go to like the Borders bookstore and like go to the sex section? No, it was just me.
No, but I do remember in elementary school, the boys in our school library going over to the nonfiction anatomy books. And they're like, hee, boobies. It's like, yes, but also muscles and tissue? What? Like, even as like a fourth grader, it was weird, but even weirder because it wasn't like porn. It was like a medical book or something.
Well, I think you had to like work a lot harder to see a boob in the 90s. Yes. So, you know.
Although they still sold porn mags in gas stations.
True.
Maybe by then it had started to kind of taper off. But I remember in junior high, my friend and I, we skipped school and we went to like the nearby gas station and we were flipping through the Playgirls.
Yeah. No, I remember doing that like straight up at like the Barnes and Noble on the Borders, because you could do that. So we would just like have a laugh.
Yeah,
you
like, just grab a stack of magazines. Oh, Sports Illustrated, and you know, here's Rolling Stone, and
I mean, you didn't even have to hide in the aisles. Like Borders had a goddamn cafe. You could just go and sit down for as long as you want.
Didn't even have to order coffee.
You didn't have to do anything. Everybody working there was your age. So.
Yeah, right.
I'll be doing the same thing on my break.
Yep. I think I have like a lot of really random all over the place notes, but I think I've kind of hit on some of the big things. You know, I guess like expectation versus reality of what post-high school life is supposed to be, especially through Mike's eyes, and then getting that kind of wake-up
from
call
Jerry O'Connell.
Trip.
I know. That killed me. I forgot he was in this movie, and it killed me when he came on as like the whatever Matthew McConaughey like stand-in. Like, I've come back to the high school party, and I'm in college, and I'm here to tell you.
I'm here to have a beer with you, and then I'm gonna leave again.
Nobody will date me. I'm Jerry O'Connell. I'm like, I find this hard to believe, actually, but okay. You were in Slayers.
I believe in the trivia, he's wearing like a fraternity thing, it's Delta. Well, it's basically DIK. Are the the Greek letters.
Perfect. That's perfect. Yeah, when I rewatched this, when I'd watched it last year after getting the DVD, I like sat up and I was like, oh my God, I totally forgot Jerry Connell was in this. And I just started laughing. And I think I giggled like his entire scene because I was like, this is fucking hilarious. That one, I forgot. Two, he's like the washed up high school. You know, he's the one that peaked in high school. He seems so much older than these kids. But then Mike's like, oh, the girls still talk about you. So, like, is he only a year older? How does he have beer? His life fell apart in a year.
How does life
And
fall
now he
apart
has
so
foot
fast?
fungus. Yeah.
Yeah, like, how did he unravel so quickly? How's
It's
it
reality. College girls, man, they were too mean to him.
They're just so serious.
Mhm.
They're into world events.
Like, where did he go? Like, what
Wow.
college would
Like-
hurt him so bad? Where the girls are just like, did he go to like Vassar or something?
I don't know. That's the other weird thing. This whole like division line, this like imaginary leap from like high school to college. Was like, is it really? Like, you're not okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah, like
Sure,
college
maybe.
girls don't like
They had
athletes.
that-
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah, that's
Right.
been my experience for sure.
Well, and I love the line where Mike, I think it's like at the beginning of the movie when he's trying to convince his buddies to break up with their girlfriends, and he's like, "Oh, do you know who goes to college, or what women go to college or something like that?" And his buddy's like, "Girls that used to be in high school."
He goes, no, women.
Yeah.
You meet women
Yeah.
in college, like legally, yes.
Yes. I just thought that was hilarious because it's like that's actually literally what it is. And you think all these big life changes are going to happen because you're going from one school to like another, like a milestone in life. But it's not. If it's scarier because you're an adult, so you're fully responsible for yourself. Although Mike seemed to be released on his own recognizance. So maybe he was already 18 because his parents didn't seem to get a call. But yeah, this whole
I
like,
wondered about that too. I was like, how did he get
He
out
also
of
seems to
trouble?
understand the
Yeah.
legal system. Like, oh, I can take the fall, so he won't be in trouble.
He understands
Yeah.
nothing else, but he does understand the legal system.
maybe he's been there before. I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is not his first
But
time
yeah.
there.
No. But Mike is capable of compassion, where he takes the blame for the situation that he and Will ended up being in. And it still didn't, at least as far as we know, didn't hurt his reputation that like William thought it was going to. So like the pictures were taken and, the police find out and all of that. But Mike was like, no, it was all me. Is that just like
I chloroformed
a
myself.
jock thing? Yeah, I couldn't help but think, especially this time around, like, is that just his white privilege showing?
Probably.
They're like, okay, it's fine.
Boys will be boys.
Yeah. Probably.
Right. I think this is maybe slightly before we were even asking those questions. So
Mhm.
maybe at that time it was just kind of assumed like you could sweet talk your way out of shit if you were like a clean cut white boy.
Or because you were good on the football
Mhm.
team or
I
something.
don't know. Right, because you like won the big game for whoever. I don't know. It's kind of the implication in Dazed and Confused too, isn't it? Like, I don't know.
Yep.
You just get away with shit.
Randall Pink Floyd.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Thank you, Jen, so much for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we got to book you for this. You picked a great film and soundtrack. I am slowly pulling myself out of teenage shame.
You didn't even bring anything up. We need a part.
I brought
two.
up that one party that I got invited to and I was too scared to drink.
It's not enough, Ryan.
You and I share that in common, Nicole.
wanna
I was
hear
a
how your
total
friends
degen in
broke
high
up with
school.
You for UCLA at a homecoming, and until then, it's not equal.
which is funny. In freshman year of college, started to experiment with the alcohol, mostly Smirnoff ices. Got iced.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember telling the girl I went to prom with, like, over instant messenger. I was like, oh yeah, like a few months ago, like, drank a little too much. Felt a little sick the next day. And she was like, Ryan, that is illegal. You could get arrested. And I was like, not for drinking 3 months ago.
Oh.
She's like calling the hotline, like, hello, I'd like to report a crime.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, you're becoming an alcoholic.
90 days ago. No, it's fine. I think once I had
What's the
like
statute of limitations for underage?
So I guess because like I
Okay.
was not involved in like doing a lot of drinking and a lot of, well, I mean, I just can't smoke anything. Like it just does not work with my body. But when I went to Bonnaroo with my friend Chris, like he would like sneak around to like smoke weed. Like I would like get really like he's like, I don't want you to be disappointed in me, man. I'm like, I don't care if you're gonna smoke. We're at a music festival. I don't care. I was like, just don't make me smell like it, you know?
I also dated somebody really Christian, and so I remember being like 19 and having like wine coolers. We went to Catalina, we had wine coolers, and we were all like in a hotel, like as a big group, and we're all like drinking like 2 wine coolers, big deal. He got so mad that he like went back to the hotel and just like read the Bible.
He prayed for you.
Literally, like I came back and he's just like angrily reading the Bible. And I'm like, but I've had 1 wine cooler. Like I don't think I'm going to hell immediately.
Nope, that's it.
Maybe
Your
3
soul is
months
gone.
later.
Sorry, Nicole. It's game over for you.
Anyway, this has been fun and cathartic, and I'm sorry. You now know way too much about me.
I love it.
So, Jen, if people want to find My Streaming Bubble, how can they find your podcast?
They can listen on a podcast player near them. They can follow me on Twitter. Yes, I still call it Twitter, at Streaming Bubble. No my in that. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and Threads as My Streaming Bubble. So you can give me a follow there as well.
Very cool. You can follow us at SoundtrackCast on Twitter and on Instagram. You can drop us a line at soundtrackcast@gmail.com as well. And if you'd like to support, you can join our Patreon where we drop bonus episodes where you can hear Nicole give you the rundown on Sing 2.
Ooh.
But once again, thank you, Jen.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was, like I said, this was so much fun. Thank you for not having covered this movie already and letting me just kind of go off about it. So